dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio American Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. Today we are talking Supreme Court, what's coming up on the docket, and what kind of things are happening in the media that seek to derail the legitimacy of the nation's highest court. Remember, Liberty Nation Radio, sponsored by LibertyNation.com. You can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. And you're back on Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio American Network. I remain your host, Mark Angelides, and we're very fortunate to have with us back in the virtual studio, Mr. Scott Cosenza, Esquire, Scott D. Cosenza, Esquire, Liberty Nation's legal affairs editor, man about town, and fount of all things judicial. Scott, thanks for being here.
And I'm joining you today from where it all happened, Mark, the city of brotherly love.
Las Vegas.
Independence map.
Right, sorry, of course, Philadelphia. The streets of, as the bard once sang. So, Scott, I had to drag you in. I know how incredibly busy you are following the legal trends that are happening across the country and preserving liberty one generation at a time. But I had to drag you in here because NBC came out with this tell from a series of judges, a group of judges. I'm not sure what the correct collective noun for that is. Let's call it a gaggle of judges, or a murder. Well, they do wear the black like the crows. A murder of justices or judges or judges discussing their opinions on where the Supreme Court's going wrong. Scott, Tell me it ain't so. I thought that the whole world accepted that, the Supreme Court is the final arbiter of truth.
When the court does what they like, it is. And when it doesn't what they don't like, then obviously there's some issues that we have to get into, Mark. That's just the nature of things. That's why when Joe Biden was president, the impetus was to add justices to the court, and maybe they'll try to take some away now. I don't know. But these things, they change with the headlines and whether plaid is in fashion or coffee's good for you. It depends on, who's making that call.
They can tell a hawk from a handsaw if the wind blows right. I think that's how they're saying, isn't it? So how unusual is it for... Now, I'm sure judges in their personal life and perhaps even in their regular writings make criticisms of Supreme Court decisions. But to sort of band together as a collective and then speak to an outlet for a big exclusive, a dozen judges, how unusual is that?
Oh, well, that is unusual. So just to address your discussion of judges' criticisms, lower court judges' criticisms of the Supreme Court, judges are free to criticize Supreme Court decision making, and they very much do so. And many of them, matter of fact, some of the best of the lower court judges, the most highly regarded throughout history, were ones that would take apart a Supreme Court case in the right way through their exquisite legal analysis and force of argument concerning the legal points, not on the more, opinion-y points or derangement kind of things, and not as a political move. This was a political move by these judges. When a judge writes critically about a Supreme Court opinion in their judging, if they have a case before them, that gives the court the opportunity to consider that argument. They can, or they may or they may not. But what that lower court judge may not do is impose their own judgment that then overturns or supersedes the Supreme Court's judgment in a place. So if the Supreme Court has said that women do have the right to an abortion or do not have the right to an abortion per the ruling in Roe v. Wade, lower court judges, and we all know, it's a highly divisive issue, right? So whatever way that opinion would go, you're going to get a significant number of judges on either side who would think the other way. They're free to write in a decision about that, why they disagree with the latest ruling from the court, but they're not free to just enforce their own ruling. That is absolutely out.
Yeah, so one of the key comments I got from that was that the justices on the Supreme Court were being criticized, and I quote, because they don't have our backs being the collective judges. And to me, it seems... Now, I'm not a lawyer, and so I have no.
You hold
real
that
idea
distinction, and by the way,
how
that's
this works. But it seems to me that a justice on the Supreme Court having the back of a lower court justice is not what the Supreme Court's for.
The Wire television series, which I revere, has a scene in it where this police officer is talking to several people, and one of those folks is an attorney, and the attorney says, "You're not a lawyer," and he says, "Why would anybody pretend to be a lawyer who wasn't one?" Like, it was the grossest thing in the world to be. So yes, I appreciate your non-lawyer status, Mark. Yeah, it's preposterous. This "have your back" thing is part of the notion of people who want judges to like do the right thing, and not in a sense of doing the right thing by upholding their oath to strictly apply the Constitution to the laws and their enforcement, but meaning like look out for people. So if you consider, for instance, whether or not the Constitution prohibits something that you might like to not see, if you're helping each other out, you may say, well, okay, we're going to allow this prohibition, even though it's not really in the text, or the other way around. And I'll take the opposite of do the right thing, for instance, and this just popped up in the news a week and a half ago, was the flag burning issue, where Donald Trump put out a memorandum, and a lot of people, and I'm one of those people, thought that it likely infringed on our First Amendment right to constitutionally protected free speech. And Justice Scalia famously opposed flag burning, thought that people shouldn't burn the flag, thought it was an abomination, and also said that the Constitution protected us from it. So for you could imagine somebody in his circle saying, like, do the right thing, help us out, means let this thing that we want to be banned continue to be banned, but his integrity forced him to say, no, it's not okay to ban this. Now, that doesn't mean dispositively it is or it isn't free speech, although I do agree with Justice Scalia on the matter. But this is also the case in many other instances where it's like affirmative action. Like, of course, it violates the Civil Rights Act. He says you can't discriminate on race, and yet here we are discriminating on race. So you invent this thing where actually we're not talking about just racial discrimination. We're only talking about beneficial discrimination, and that's the helping that conservatives and libertarians typically eschew. If the law needs to be changed, the law should be changed the way it was enacted, by its authorship in the people's house, the legislature, and then weighed in on by the executive. But it's not up to the Supreme Court or any court, we would say, generally speaking, to make laws. It's just to decide whether they're lawful or lawfully enforced or not.
We're going to be back on this conversation after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.